It's funny how everything can seem perfect until it's not. My wedding day felt like a fairy tale. The sun was shining bright, the air was thick with the scent of blooming roses, and I swear I could feel a buzz of excitement ripple through the crowd. My wife, Emily, looked stunning. Her white dress shimmered like it was lit from within, and her smile was so genuine, I thought I'd never see anything like it again. We had planned this moment for years, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel like the luckiest guy alive. The reception was a blur of laughter, clinking glasses, and heartfelt speeches. Everything seemed to fall into place. But I guess, in the back of my mind, I'd always wondered if this happiness was fragile. I'd noticed little things in the months leading up to the wedding, glances that lingered too long, her phone slipping into her purse the moment I entered the room, a little too much enthusiasm when talking about her best friend, Mark. I shrugged it off as nerves or minor insecurities. We'd been together for years, and I trusted her. That trust shattered the moment I found the messages. It was the night after the wedding, still riding high on the adrenaline of the day. I was alone in our apartment, the house still buzzing with family and friends. I was about to open a bottle of wine when I remembered the gift box Emily had left on the table. It was a beautiful, heavy thing, velvet-lined, with a discreet latch. I'd seen her place it beside her gift bags, and somehow, I didn't think much about it. Just one of those things you do when you're trying to savor your new life, I guess. But something felt off. I don't know what prompted me, but I kept looking at it, the little voice in my head whispering that I should check. My fingers trembled as I peeled back the tape. The box was filled with tissue paper and wrapped presents, but beneath that, I spotted a tiny, folded piece of paper. My heart skipped. I unfolded it cautiously, expecting maybe a heartfelt note, but what I saw was a string of messages, texts from Mark to Emily. I recognized some of the words. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible. Wish you were here. My stomach dropped and my hands went cold. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen. Those messages weren't just a flirt. They were detailed, intimate, and ongoing. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife, my partner, the woman I'd trusted with everything. She'd been sneaking around during our honeymoon with my best man. My best man. That realization punched me in the gut like a steel rod. I felt how heavy the box was in my grasp, how the air around me suddenly felt thick and choking. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Did I miss the signs? Was I blind or just too in love to see the truth? I looked around the apartment, my vision blurry. My fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. All the warmth and happiness from the wedding day was washing away, replaced by this icy wave of betrayal. I smelled the faint scent of the wine I'd just opened, but it tasted bitter on my tongue. My head started spinning, and I knew I couldn't keep this quiet. Not anymore. I had to do something. I had to find out the full story, and I knew deep down that this kind of betrayal wouldn't just be swept under the rug with a few tears and apologies. This was war. I needed a plan, something cold, calculated, and certain. Because if there was one thing I learned that night, it was that the trust I once had was gone, and now I was going to make sure she paid for it. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding head and a brain that felt like it had been run over. My stomach twisted as I replayed the night before. Those messages, that betrayal, the feeling that I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. I kept going over every detail. How long had this been going on? Was it just the honeymoon, or had I missed signs earlier? The worst part was the silence in my mind, like a deafening void filled with betrayal. I knew I couldn't confront her right away. Not without a plan. If I just blurted everything out, I'd risk losing control, and I didn't want that. I had to think cold, precise, and ruthless. I sat there in my pajamas, staring at that damn gift box, trying to piece everything together. I needed a way to verify everything, to make sure I had proof that couldn't be denied. Soon, I started digging through my phone, trying to find anything that could connect the dots. I remembered her saying she'd left her phone in the bedroom, so I tiptoed in, feeling like a thief in my own home. I had no intention of snooping. At this point, I had no choice. I needed confirmation. I found her phone on the nightstand, unlocked and lying face down. My heart hammered as I hesitated, then grabbed it. I had to be quick. I scrolled through her messages, nothing suspicious at first. But then I saw it, a deleted chat. I quickly dug into the recently deleted folder and found a conversation that made my stomach churn. There were messages with Mark talking about plans to meet up that day, how excited they were to see each other again. I could see the time stamps hours before I found the gift box. They had been sneaking around during my honeymoon. That was the moment I knew for sure. I had definitive proof. I sat there, clutching her phone tightly, feeling every muscle in my body tense. My head was pounding. Again, but I forced myself to stay calm. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just confront her blindly. I had to be strategic. This wasn't about yelling or accusations. No, it was about control, about making her regret every lie, every betrayal. I spent the rest of the day planning. First, I'd gather more evidence, screenshots, recordings, anything that could serve as undeniable proof. Second, I'd reach out to my own contacts, find out what she'd been doing during the honeymoon, who she was talking to, where she'd gone. I wasn't naive enough to think I'd find everything in a day, but I needed a head start. By nightfall, I had a clear picture. I knew how to turn this around, how to make her regret her actions. I wasn't going to be some doormat waiting for her to decide my fate. No, I was the one with the power now, and I was going to use it. The best part. I had a plan that would hit her where it hurt, emotionally, mentally, without crossing any lines into violence or cruelty. Revenge, I realized, didn't have to be about physical pain. It was about making someone see the damage they'd caused, making them feel powerless. That's what I was going for. I sat back, took a deep breath, and looked at the evidence I'd gathered. A slow smile crept across my face. This was just the beginning. She thought she could cheat and get away with it. Well, she was about to learn that betrayal always comes with a price, and I was about to be the one to collect that debt. The game was on. Over the next couple of days, I stayed silent, letting my anger simmer just beneath the surface. Every time I looked at her, I saw her smile, her innocent face, except I knew better now. I'd uncovered enough to make her realize her perfect little world was crumbling. I kept my cool, but inside I was brewing something cold and calculated. I needed her to feel the weight of her betrayal, and that meant I had to be meticulous. I reached out to my closest friend, Jake. He and I had been through a lot together, and I trusted him more than anyone. I told him enough to get him on my side without revealing everything just yet. "Look," I said, voice tight. "I need your help. I don't want her to see it coming, but I want her to know I'm not stupid. I have proof, and I want to make her regret it." Jake listened intently, and then he said, "What's the plan? You want to confront her directly?" "No," I replied, shaking my head. "That'll just blow everything up. I want her to think she still has control, that she's getting away with it. But I'm going to turn the tables. I've got some tricks up my sleeve." The plan was simple. I would gather more evidence, plan a few subtle traps, and then catch her in the act, preferably in a way that would embarrass her but not destroy her completely. I wanted her to see what she'd lost, to feel the sting of betrayal from her own side. That evening, I started working on my plan. I installed a discreet app on her phone, one that could record texts and calls without her knowing. I also set up a simple camera in the living room, pointed at the entrance where she often left her purse or quickly checked her phone. It wasn't about spying for the sake of spying. It was about having undeniable proof of her lies when the moment came. I also reached out to Mark. I didn't want him to know I was onto him yet, but I needed to know if he'd been planning this too. I played it cool, just a casual, "Hey Mark, how's it going? Heard you guys left on your honeymoon early. Everything good?" I needed to see if he'd slip up or say something revealing. That night I went to bed feeling like I had the upper hand, but still unsure of how everything would play out. I knew she was hiding something, but I didn't know how deep it went. The thing was, I'd already decided how this story would end. Whether she left, or I kicked her out, or I made her see she'd lost everything, she'd regret ever betraying me. The next morning I woke up early, feeling the adrenaline crackling in my veins. I checked the recordings from the night before. Nothing yet, but I knew it was only a matter of time. I made coffee, the bitter smell filling the apartment, and sat down to review everything I had. My mind was sharp, my heart cold. I realized I was no longer the naive husband I once was. I was preparing for war. I had the evidence now, the plan in place, and a quiet, deadly resolve. I wasn't going to be the one humiliated here. She'd learned that betrayal has consequences, and I was about to make sure she paid. The game was starting to unfold, and I was ready to see her fall. I just had to wait for the right moment, wait for her to slip up again. And when she did, I'd be waiting, the hunter in this quiet hunt for the truth. The waiting was the hardest part. Every hour felt like a lifetime. I kept checking the recordings, the text logs, anything that might give me a lead. I was basically stalking her from a distance, but I didn't care. I needed to catch her in the act, or at least have irrefutable proof that she was lying and cheating. One afternoon, I noticed her acting a little too casual, like she'd forgotten about the little camera in the living room. She was on her phone, texting, smirking in that way that made my stomach turn. I stayed calm, pretending to be engrossed in my laptop, but inside I was tense. I knew she was planning something. I could feel it in her every move. Suddenly, I saw her get up and head to the kitchen. I waited a beat, then quietly reached for my phone to activate the app again. The little indicator flashed on she was making a call. I held my breath. The first few minutes were quiet, but then I heard her voice, low and whispering. "Yeah, I miss you," she said softly. "I can't believe I'm doing this, but I just can't stop thinking about you." My heart clenched. It was him, Mark. No doubt about it now. I pressed record, my hand trembling slightly. My mind went into overdrive. She was actively talking to Mark. They arranged to meet again, probably late that night. I had her on tape just like that. This was the smoking gun I needed. I knew I had to escalate my plan. I couldn't just cut her off now. I had to make her see that I was onto her. I decided to set one more trap. I called Mark's phone, played it cool, and pretended to be mutual friend. "Hey Mark, I've been hearing some stuff. You and Emily, huh? Care to explain?" He hesitated but then coughed out a lie. "No idea what you're talking about, man. Everything's fine, just working late." I kept pressing, feeling the adrenaline rush through me. "Listen, I've got proof she's been talking to you during my honeymoon. Real proof." I didn't tell him I'd recorded their conversations. I wanted him to sweat, to think I knew everything. That night I kept my phone closed, waiting. I knew Emily would try to sneak out or do something foolish. I had the recordings, the evidence, and my plan ready. When she finally slipped out of the bedroom after midnight, I was already awake in the dark, waiting. She tiptoed past me in the dim glow of the hallway light, clutching her purse. I didn't say a word. I just followed her at a distance, my heart pounding, fists clenched. I let her think she was getting away with it, that she was still in control. When she reached the door, she paused for a moment, looking around like she was making sure no one was watching. I slipped out of shadows and blocked her way. "Going somewhere?" I asked, voice cold and even. She froze, eyes wide. "What are you doing? Let me go." I slowly pulled out my phone and pressed play on the recording app. The sound of her whispering to Mark filled the silence. Her face drained of color as she realized I'd been listening all along. Her voice cracked. "You weren't supposed to hear that. Please don't ruin everything." I looked her straight in the eyes. "You've already ruined everything. How long has this been going on?" "During our honeymoon." She stammered, trying to deny it. "It's not what it looks like." "Oh, I think I have enough proof," I said, feeling a strange calm I'd never experienced before. "You're done. We're done. I want you out of this house." Her eyes welled with tears, but I didn't care. I just wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. That was the moment I knew I had her exactly where I wanted her. Her world was collapsing, and she had no one to blame but herself. I handed her the keys and pointed toward the door. "Pack your things and don't come back." She looked at me devastated, clutching her purse like it was her last hope. I watched her walk away, realizing I'd finally taken control, and that was when I felt the cold satisfaction settle in. I'd always wondered what revenge would feel like. Now I knew. It burned, but it also set me free. For the first time in days, I could breathe a little easier. The betrayal was exposed, and I was finally in the driver's seat. The aftermath hit me harder than I expected. I thought I'd feel victorious, but instead, it settled into this strange, hollow ache. Watching her walk out that door, clutching her bag and looking like her entire life had just collapsed, I felt a weird mix of relief and regret. I'd made damn sure she paid for her lies, but the price of betrayal left scars I wasn't sure I could ever fully heal from. I stayed in the empty apartment that night. the silence deafening. The only sounds were the distant hum of traffic outside and my own ragged breathing. I replayed everything in my head, the look on her face, the way she'd begged, the trembling in her voice. I wanted her to feel powerless, and I think she did. But somewhere deep down, I wondered if I'd gone too far. Did I really want her to be that broken? Or was I just trying to punish her for what she'd done to me? In the days that followed, I tried to piece my life back together. I changed the locks, threw out her things, and kept the evidence I'd gathered securely stored. Every time I found myself relapsing into anger, I'd remind myself, I did this for me. Not for revenge alone, but to finally take control and stop feeling like the victim of her lies. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd lost part of myself in this process. My friends kept telling me I'd done the right thing, that I finally saw her true colors. But I kept wondering, was this really about justice or just about making her suffer? I'd always been honest with myself, and I knew I wasn't the kind of guy who wanted revenge for revenge's sake. But she'd crossed a line. A line I'd never imagined she'd cross. And honestly, I didn't think I had much choice. The thing was, I also knew I couldn't pretend I was okay. Every time I walked into the bedroom, I saw her things still sitting there, untouched, like a ghost haunting me. I started locking myself in the study, avoiding the rest of the apartment altogether. My mind kept circling back to what I'd uncovered, how the trust we'd built had turned into a lie. How I'd been blindsided by the woman I loved and her best friend, the man I'd known forever. Eventually, I decided I had to face the reality that I was better off without her. I started making arrangements. I found a new place, one that felt more like me. I also started seeing a counselor, not because I wanted to talk about her, but because I needed to process what I'd been through. It was a long road and the wounds were still fresh. I didn't want to carry this weight forever. One day, I went to the courthouse and filed for divorce. I needed to take control of the situation to make it official. I handed over the papers feeling strange, like I was finally closing a chapter I'd been stuck in for too long. When I left, I felt a strange sense of clarity. It hurt, but I knew I was finally free. Looking back, I see that trust is fragile, something you have to nurture and protect. I also learned that betrayal can come from the people you trust most, and when it does, you have to decide what kind of person you want to be afterward. I chose to be stronger, smarter, and more careful with my heart. I've come a long way from that day I found her messages, but I know I'll carry the scars for a while. Now I'm rebuilding my life one step at a time, and I won't lie, there are days when I still think about what happened, about her, about Mark. But most days I feel a strange sense of liberation. I learned that revenge, when done right, isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your peace. And I finally did that. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through something similar, it's this. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But you don't have to let it define you. Take control, set boundaries, and never let someone take away your peace. Because in the end, the best revenge is simply living well. It's been a few months since everything fell apart, and honestly, I've never felt more like myself. I still get the occasional flashback, those awful, vivid memories of her whispering in the dark, the way her face looked when she realized I knew. But mostly, I feel a sense of relief. I finally took control. I finally reclaimed my life from the wreckage she left behind. I guess I've learned a lot from this whole ordeal. Mainly, that betrayal doesn't just hurt, it changes you. But it also reveals who you really are. I found out I was capable of standing up for myself in ways I never thought possible. I learned that revenge, when rooted in clarity and purpose, isn't about hurting others as much as it's about healing yourself. And honestly, that's the hardest lesson of all. I've started dating again, cautiously. It's strange how trust becomes a currency you have to rebuild from scratch. I'm not rushing into anything, but I'm slowly opening up to the idea of new beginnings, because I realize you can't stay stuck in the past. You have to push forward, even when the wounds are still fresh. You have to choose to become better, stronger, and more resilient. Every day now feels like a small victory. I wake up, breathe in the new day, and remind myself that I am no longer defined by her betrayal. Instead, I'm defined by how I respond to it, by the choices I make moving forward. And that's something I never want to forget. Looking back, I'm grateful for the clarity. She showed me her true colors and I learned to see through the lies. I refuse to be a victim anymore. I am the architect of my happiness now, and I'm going to live every day with that in mind. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust me, it's brutal, but you are stronger than you think. You don't have to accept betrayal as the end. Use it as a wake-up call. Rebuild, reclaim. And above all, remember, your peace is worth fighting for. Don't let anyone steal it from you.